How's it going, guys? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to Mamiya. Now, please, we have an important thing I gotta say real quick here, especially because, again, the only reason I'm playing this game, and many of the games I've been able to play on this channel have been because of the generosity of the publisher, Fruitbat Factory. They're the people who do translations of a lot of visual novels, and they pick up a lot of series that I think would normally get overlooked, or maybe just never even, like, the creators never even considered doing a translation, and they bring it over to us, and I've been able to enjoy so many good stories from them. Unfortunately, something's happened very tragically this week. I got really busy, which is why this video is ultimately late, but it kind of timed really well with like some of the drama that's been ending up happening on Discord. So Discord's kind of the main hub for Fruitbat Factory fans and like the way for their their community members and the developers to have outreach with the community and, just kind of have that interaction. Well, unfortunately, it looks like some hackers were able to do a phishing scheme and were able to get access to an admin account of that Discord and were able to lock out other admins, flood the thing with a bunch of different like spam accounts and other people to help, and now they've kind of revamped the channel and they're attempting to make it look legitimate again. It sounds like they're effectively trying to continue more phishing schemes, trying to get people to download things, and unfortunately they're trying to pose as Fruitbat Factory offering free game codes, free game downloads, and inadvertently are installing very, very aggressive viruses onto computers. So please be careful and cautious always, not just with Fruitbat Factory, but with anybody who sends you a link. If you don't know who they are and it's not reputable, be very, very, very careful about what you click and how. Something I know I try and keep on guard for, but I'm sure I have slip-ups. I thankfully haven't had anything major happen, but it happens to all of us at one time or another. There are some safety things you can do, like if you download something and you're suspicious of it, just unplug yourself from the internet immediately. The types of viruses they're putting on are actually so vicious and advanced that not only do you need to unplug your computer from the internet, but you probably would need to do a hard reinstall of Windows and all their associated programs, essentially giving your computer a true wipe, not even like a reset. Like it has to be a pure wipe, like from ground zero, in order to try and prevent these guys from getting access to all your accounts, anything that's associated with your login, with any of your cookies that you use on your, if you use Chrome or Firefox, they can get access to all your passwords. It's very, very bad. And my heart goes out to all of my people at Fruitbat Factory. Thank you guys so much for all you've done. But thankfully, I was going to give an update about staying away from the Discord, and actually I was going to promote their new Discord channel. However, that won't actually be super necessary, because now if you click a link to go to Fruitbat Factory's Discord, their custom link, one that actually says their name in the URL code, has their flair, they were able to recover that from Discord itself. So now those links will go back. But I do highly encourage you to check out their Discord. I'll put a link of it in the top of the description here. Just a great community, great fun place to go. They have a lot of great support, especially for 100% Orange Juice, which is just a really fun virtual board game. Highly recommend you check it out. It's not very expensive, if at all, and they have free weekends and stuff all the time. Just keep it on your radar. It's just a quirky, fun way to have a good time with other people online, and for people who enjoy anime, manga, and Japanese culture in general. Just want to encourage that, and again, give them all my support. I know it's a long intro, but there's a lot of going on. It's always really sad to see these kind of things happen, so I just want to give my full support for them. Anyway, let's jump into the game real quick. We're Natsumi in the afterlife, and we've discovered crazy. He's effectively a kind of a historical verification angel. This idea of in the afterlife, he kind of reads all possible paths that true human history will take, and he is supposed to examine these paths, determine the path that is most proper for human history to go down, and kind of assert it. But he also believes that, oddly, he has all his memories from his previous life. He cares about all his friends, and all the possible paths he's been presented with have been pretty terrible. So he really wants to find a way to keep them alive and happy. And by doing so, he's been told he can start to interfere. He's not supposed to. The librarian was very specific about that, but he starts to interfere anyway. He's been given a little guidance on how to do so. And when he starts to interfere, oddly, instead of focusing the story on his friends, the story suddenly deviates and goes towards Mamiya. But of course, we don't really know what Mamiya is. I'm starting to suspect that Mamiya might be an entity very similar to what Natsumi is now, maybe gone rogue. But whatever it is, like, it starts with like something about the death of Mamiya, which is odd again. But especially because the people who are like mourning Mamiya's death all remember Mamiya differently, very similarly to how Natsumi and his friends all had a different experience and encounters with the entity Mamiya. So Natsumi's trying to figure out what's going on here, because not only is this really kind of out of the blue, but it just isn't lining up a whole lot with what we know so far, and it's not really what we expected. It's introduced a whole new cast of characters and their interactions and trying to discuss the secret that is Mamiya. So let's find out what this is all about, shall we? Let's jump right in. Phew. Blackout. The story briefly stopped. I closed the book with a sigh. I'm finding more questions than answers. And that's why you came to me, eh? Yes, I figured I should get to the opinion of a senior in the field. A senior? Me? Yes, did I upset you? Not really, and besides, you're fresh meat, so I guess everyone here would be your senior. I don't mind helping you. I mean, there are worse ways to kill time. Careful you don't go out get found out, though. I'm aware of the risks. Anyway, I've learned some new things, but all they did was make me even more confused. Like my friends, each of those people at the cafe were close to their own Mamiyas, and they were all torn up over his death. Mamiya had affected their lives, but perhaps it was his death that freed them? And at least that's what I thought at first. But it doesn't really seem that way, does it? No, I then considered another possibility, that even in death, Mamiya might still be tormenting those four. He may be dead, but he lingers on as a wraith and continues to taint their lives. I'm not saying he's a ghost, but considering he can't be seen, the comparison feels appropriate. And I mean, is a ghost really that far out of the realm of possibilities at this point? Like, you are also dead yet still alive. Like, it's obviously now possible. That means, like, all these things that we would normally, like, you know, dismiss as possibilities kind of come back onto the table. It's deductive reasoning, really. He's probably just clinging to his old, like, tendencies. It'd be hard not to when you retain your memory. If those four are actually still bound by Mamiya, then just like my friends, they might eventually be caught up in his endless circle of tragedy. If I can save at least one person from Mamiya's influence, I'll do it. But I first need to know what he really is. Okay, I just realized something. Remember how, like, occasionally, like, the main characters would have those flashy visions of other people saying, like, Mamiya's mine. Now, one guy even, like, beat the crap out of, Kato, I believe it was. And, like, I wonder if they were these original four, or at least a few of them. Kind of resembled one of them, I think, if I remember correctly. So, yeah. We'll have to figure out how this all plays out, but I've got that running theory going now too. Like, they might be even tied up in all of this as well. Especially if they are realizing that Mamiya is visiting other people. I bit my lip, bearing the chagrin. I thought I had come upon a new lead, but instead I found even more of Mamiya's victims. If left alone, he would bring misfortune upon people other than my friends. Suddenly, I heard the sound of fingers snapping from behind the door. Relax, newbie. Huh? Weren't you told that it was a spectator's job to observe? It's kind of like star reading. You sit back, observe, and see new trajectories. That lets you predict where the story needs to become the historical truth mankind will follow. The first steps of any spectator is to unravel each and every cause. Unravel each and every cause. Well, it ain't uncommon for new characters to show up. What's important is to find the common link that connects them to the stories you've already observed. So it's like in the book that leaves so much up to interpretation that completely different characters and scenes could be involved in similar situations and thus get mixed up. That kind of describes like the original idea of the story, like all those stories were very similar but different, obviously. Exactly. The people at the cafe and my friends, the ones they thought the one thing they had in common was Mamiya. So their involvement with Mamiya was enough to insert them into the historical truth as a what if. That confirms my suspicion. Those four are also in Mamiya's clutches. I didn't know who they were. Unlike Kikuchi, Ryo, and the others, they weren't my friends in real life. What did I know was that they too had fallen prey to Mamiya. I'd like to point out that they potentially fall prey. Technically, if he's able to view these things as a spectator, they're not nailed down yet, which is something to really give you some food for thought. Technically, I don't know if there is a time limit here. I'm guessing he lives beyond the dimension of time. For instance, okay, you got to start thinking, when you start thinking in the fifth dimension, or actually maybe it might be technically the seventh dimension, but once you start getting up to that level of like dimensional theory, like you're starting to enter into areas that are so theoretical, it's actually really hard to comprehend, but I'll try and explain it to you, very briefly. So we live in a three-dimensional, subject to a fourth dimension of time world. We live in a place with like length, width, and height, and it progresses from state to state, marked by a passage of time, which is something we've imposed upon it, but essentially time is matter moving from point to point and the measurement of changes made in between those 2 points. That's essentially what time is. But if you enter into higher dimensional planes, which is what a lot of people will theorize is the only possible way for a afterlife to actually occur, you might start being able to enter into different dimensional planes where you can travel through time in different ways. A good way to explain this is actually try to imagine a world in the second dimension experiencing something in the third dimension. The idea is if you lived in a place that everything was perfectly flat, like I'm talking perfectly flat, like not even atoms are, like atoms are three-dimensional, two-dimensional is perfectly flat, and then you introduce like a ball, a three-dimensional object to a second-dimensional world. So a ball passes through this perfectly flat, perfectly like expansive plane of existence. So the ball phases through it. If you were an entity, like say you were an intelligent being that existed in a two-dimensional sphere, you're able to perceive other entities in 2 dimensions, but that's all you knew. Essentially, everything you know is flats and edges. So you just see the perfectly thin edges of other entities, and that's your whole experience with everything you interact with. Then you see a 3-dimensional object pass through. From your perspective, where you can only see in that second dimension, you would see an object that starts off as a pinprick, like appearing out of nowhere, expanding until it's an object the size of the widest, not radius, it's diameter of this 3-dimensional object, and then eventually it shrinks and then vanishes into nothing. From the perspective of something in there, it would almost seem like alien. Like, how did something just appear, grow, and then disappear all at once? But from a 3-dimensional perspective, it's quite easy to see, oh, that was just a 3-dimensional object passing through 2-dimensional space. The frame of reference is really what makes it possible to comprehend. When you start exploring time because we experience time essentially in like a single dimension. It's essentially A to B across a line, like just a line. That's it. There's nothing else really to it. You can talk about cyclical like time patterns all you want, but like for the purposes of this mental experiment, we're experiencing it in a single timeline, like literally just a line like that. But what if you could add multiple dimensions to that? What if you could add a X and Y dimension? What if you had a Y dimension along with your X dimension? Then you could conceivably travel through time sideways. What would that look like? Well, it would mean that you would be able to transpond between places in space without being restricted by the speed of light and physical limitations on like traveling through 3-dimensional space. Because you can traverse time like horizontally, it means that you could move physically across space without moving time forward, or at least moving it at a slower pace. And heck, you might even be able to go backward in time by simply exercising the same side trajectoral movement. How this would work is completely theoretical, but the concept is that. Then you can add a third dimension to that. Oh, what if you don't just travel laterally through time, where you can control your juxtaposition through time, but what if you can also explore higher and lower than time itself? So you can extend beyond what we would consider a timeline, which is almost like a 2-dimensional plane where we only perceive things phasing through it in that way. Now you can phase in and out of time because you're not limited to a single timeline, but have access to all possible timelines, all of them stacked on top of each other, but you can freely move about them. That allows you to transverse through them, and as an entity who can experience this, you only temporarily exist in any timelines that you touch and phase through, and probably wouldn't even be able to be witnessed. So you would almost exist like a ghost, because you're you can exist there, but you're so extended and like separated from the time dimension itself that your physical body is not locked any physical place inside that third dimension because you exist in a higher dimensional plane, but you would likely be able to observe everything in that plane, just like how a three-dimensional being could observe a two-dimensional plane. In fact, you could have perspectives on a three-dimensional plane that you could never have normally. Thus, you could potentially observe things like these spectators do in all their myriad possibilities. So, does that make any sense? I know that was a huge ramble, but I haven't had a chance to do one of these in a while, and it's really the best way we can try and understand what's probably happening to our friend Natsumi. He has essentially become a fifth or sixth dimensional being. He can travel through this library, which is essentially a catalog and a record of all possible timelines and all possible futures, all possible pasts, and all true pasts and true futures simultaneously. He has a role to play in this determining the future, but you could also argue that these futures have already been determined because they don't have to travel through time the same way. From the perspective of this library, the timeline's already over. They're just simply examining it, as you would read through a massive book. Because when you read a novel, the ending's already been dictated. When you start a book, the fate of those characters has been sealed, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the journey to experience it with them. Same thing with these spectators. So conceivably, he can jump around in this timeline as much as he wants because he isn't restricted. In fact, until he makes a decision, I don't think timelines would be resolved, at least from his perspective, because he doesn't have to worry about time progressing beyond what he's ready to accept or perceive. In fact, you could even conceive that he could go back and change things if he wanted to. Although it sounds like the Lord, whoever's in charge of this, might have an ability to prevent that from happening, thus preventing key historical established facts from rewriting established facts further down the line, and thus leading to a cascading alteration of the entire time spectrum. You know, there's likely rules and laws he has to follow, but the rules might be fluid because he's being told rules like don't interfere, and he's clearly able to do so. So again, it's really interesting. But I would claim that Natsumi is probably a fifth or sixth dimensional being at this point, and that time has no relevancy. He can feel pressure because he wants to fix things, but he likely has no actual time limit because he exists in a space where he can traverse through time like we can traverse through a swimming pool, freely, with a little bit of skill, at any point in desire we want to. I specifically say swimming pool because, you know, there's no currents there. So, that long rant's finally over, but that's my theory. I've been thinking about this for the past week. I think Natsumi has ascended into a plane that is just so many dimensions above that they can traverse time like we traverse a physical space, like a pool or our house or, you know, a subway station. Like, it's a place where they can just go and be and do things irresponsible, or not irresponsible, but unburdened by the persistent flow of time. I can't just watch and let even more people suffer these tragedies. I clenched my fist. My body trembled with anger. I appreciate your help. So, what's he gonna do? I'm going to observe them for a while longer. Their story might contain a hint that could help me uncover Mamiya's true identity. That's so. Best of luck then. What if this is Mamiya? That'd be super annoying. Thanks. Alright. I walked over to the book and took a few moments to gather myself. I would shy away from no amount of detours if it meant I could save my friends. I'll find out what Mamiya is if it's the last thing I do. Sorry, got a little catch in my throat. I focused my consciousness. It was something I had to do in order to sink deeper into the story. Leaning forward, I read the first line like I always had. Tokyo, during the year in which the world was prophesied to end. I took a deep breath and gathered my resolve. Then let me teach you how to interfere. As my senses began to fade, I recalled what the man behind that cold door had told me. I wasn't deep enough yet. I had to go further down. Now's your chance. Bite into your tongue. I poured all my strength I could into my jaw. Ow! Ow! If you pass out while spectating, your consciousness loses its place and continues to descend until your soul enters some random schmuck in the masses and you get yourself a body to inhabit in the world. Well, that doesn't sound good. I didn't know if there was any truth to his words. Perhaps he simply wanted to deceive me and make me suffer a fate worse than death. Even so, if there was ever a sliver of a chance that I could save my friends, I had no choice but to do it, no matter the pain. Natsumi died. Uh-oh. Huh? I'm back at my funeral again. What happened to the people from the cafe? As one question after another raced through my mind. Oh, sorry. Hey! It's my fault, really. Huh. Wait! Without even thinking, I grabbed the hand peeking out of his blazer. Do keep in mind that it is forbidden to interfere with the story. Sorry, it's nothing. I see. I'll be going then. My funeral went on just as it had every other time I'd watched it. No matter how many times I went through this, imagining their pain as they approached the casket always hurt me. Natsumi. How do they see me? Under usual circumstances, spectators don't regain any of their past memories. Due to this, your situation, a case in which a spectator has the memories of their past life, is involved in a story related to themselves before they died, is complicated to say the least. When you begin spectating, you descend into the present of the story and take over the position of a nameless character. That's how it works. Huh? Take over? But then, what happens to the life of that person? Whatever do you mean? A single member of the nameless masses hardly has a life worth a story. That implies that the people are actually NPCs. I wouldn't concern myself with it. Focus instead on spectating. As a result of all that, I would be perceived differently than the Natsumi Soichiro being mourned right now. This is how it was supposed to be. Although I realized this had been put in place to prevent unnecessary confusion, it still vexed me not being able to call out to them as Natsumi. As the funeral came to an end, people began to file out of the church. If I didn't do anything here, the story wouldn't change one bit. In each of their perspectives, Mamiya would trifle with their lives, resulting in their eventual deaths. Interfere with the story. Interfere with the story. I'll make all of them happy. Huh. Excuse me, are you Tojo Minato? Huh? Oh, yes. I have something to tell you. It's about Natsumi. What's this about, what's this about Natsumi? I came 'cause he said it concerned me. Huh? You too. You too, Ryo? I thought it was just about me. Thank you very much for coming. What a pain. I'm out. Huh? Wait! I thought it was just about me and Natsumi. Why are the others here? Is this a new kind of prank? I gotta say, using a dead person for something like this is really bad taste. No, I have a message from Natsumi. What? And it relates to us. Yes. Look at this. I pulled out a single piece of paper from my chest pocket. Look, it's Natsumi's handwriting. I got it from him when he was still alive. God, how weird to talk about yourself in the third person. When he was alive? Yes. Actually, I had written it up during this very funeral. I may not have looked like Natsumi Soichiro, but I still had his handwriting. The four gathered around the piece of paper on the bench, looking like scientists faced with a tough equation. Why would he... It's like he knew he was going to die. Is this his will? An informal one, at least. An informal will. Some people write them down in case they die. That's right. Normally, this kind of note would include a person's hopes and requests, like whether to keep them on life support or do what to do with their wealth, things like that. But this one has 4 names on it. Kikuchi Ryo, Chojo Minato, Morichika Haruki, So Kato. The names of the 4 of you gathered here. What did Natsumi want of us? Huh. This is what's written on the paper. During the months before my burial, please gather every Friday and decide what to bring alongside my casket. That is what he wants. Of the 4 of us, you mean? Yes. Even though most of us don't even know each other? Yes. What the heck is he thinking? He wanted us to choose what to bury with him? Is that really Natsumi's wish? It is, yes. He entrusted this to me. Unlike the standard will, this doesn't hold any legal power. So ultimately the choice is yours. But Natsumi wants you to properly process his death. That's what I think anyway. The contents of the note were so full of regret and self-love that even I wondered why I'd written it. Strangely enough, though, it really did seem like Natsumi had jotted all this down while he was alive and then entrusted it to me. Since I had no memories of how Natsumi died, I couldn't help but feel it this way. Count me out. But this funeral's enough of a goodbye. I don't have what it takes to drag Natsumi's death around for a whole month. Ryo, I understand. I want to do this. Huh? We would meet up, talk about Natsumi, and decide what to bury him with him. This sounds kind of embarrassing, but it still hasn't really sunk in for me that he's gone. Even after all this, I would probably just go, oh, he's gone, and then completely forget about him within a few days. And then life would go on as usual. That's totally normal, though. What's the big deal? It's how you're supposed to treat the dead. You don't have to say it like that, though. You're right, it's normal, but that's why I want it to end. I don't want it to end like this. Like it's nothing. I want to properly say goodbye to him. I want to do it as well. Minato. He's right. I still haven't properly processed Natsumi's death. When he died, I wished that I'd been kinder to him. I regretted not talking to him more. And that's the kind of regret that stays with you for your whole life. So, at the very least, I want to sort out all my feelings and do it the right way. God, I can't stand gloomy crap like this. Death should be the end for people, dang it. He didn't even keep in touch. So why would he choose me? Fine, whatever. Guess it's only for a month. You're willing to do it? Yeah, but we're strangers once it's over. Kikuchi Ryo, was it? Yeah. I won't force you to do this, but I would like to know what Natsumi spoke to you about. Is that bad? I won't be much help, though. That's hardly a problem. Okay, then. I'd like you all to meet up in this church again next Friday. Hold on. What's your name? Huh? My name? Oh, yeah. It's kind of creepy how you know our names, but we don't know yours. You didn't tell us how you knew Natsumi either. I hadn't thought this part through. What was the name I was supposed to use here? Seeing me act so perplexed, they all gave me justifiable, suspicious looks. Come on. Hurry and think of a name. My name is Natsumi. Oh. I said it. I went and said it. Huh. Are you related to Natsumi? I don't think so. I don't see this guy among the relatives during the funeral. Are you? Their distressful looks only made me even more uncomfortable. I couldn't think of anything else. Should I have just blurted out a random name? Well, obviously, anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together would have done that. But after seeing them die one by one, getting to finally meet them face to face, made me act greedy. If at all possible, I wanted them to call me Natsumi again. And this is what it led to me. You think you're too good to give us your real name? Talk about being arrogant. Are you messing with us? I can't say I appreciate being the butt of a joke. Is that your actual name? I didn't expect to be in such a deep mess. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. I mean, to be fair, isn't it pretty common for a lot of surnames to be like frequent around Japan? Like, I don't know if that's true for sure, but my impression that I got from like various like sources, like shows and my anime teacher, what am I saying? My Japanese teacher, is that it's fairly common. Natsumi isn't that rare of a name after all. That's so. Yes. I'm really sorry I hesitate to reveal my name because I knew it would only end up confusing you, but I can also understand why it would make you mistrust me. The bottom line is that I'm not his relative, but my name is also Natsumi. You could have just said that from the start. Thank you, so, Kato. So, how do you know Natsumi? Oh, we happened to run into each other in town. Really? He gave you a note that important? Marichika Hakura's gaze was positively piercing. I had to make this seem feasible, otherwise they'd never agree to meet up again. To be able to reasonably keep in touch with them, I had to make sure they still trusted me. I needed to think of a good explanation. Oh, great. Well, Natsumi's looks is one thing, but his personality was the one that makes most sense. Please, remember Natsumi's personality. His personality? Yeah, he was like the air, wasn't he? Hard to fully grasp. I really did meet him by chance when I asked him for directions in town. When I told him my name, he said, "What a coincidence, it's the same as mine," and we hit it off right away. Oh, yeah, I guess I could see Natsumi being fond of people sharing his name. I agree, that does make sense. Really? I can only assume he entrusted this note along with this role to me because we had the same name. I think having a stranger with him with the same name conveying his words was his what? His sense of humor at work, probably. It ain't funny though. Never has been. Well, screw it. Friday, right? Just gotta come here. Yes, please do. Well, that worked out better than I thought. Oh. Left alone in the church, I sighed. The lively atmosphere from before had been replaced by an almost oppressive silence. The friends I thought I'd never meet again, and Natsumi. The 5 had now agreed to meet each other over the next month. I could have never reached this point by remaining a mere observer. So I need to make absolutely sure that everything goes well. If I had stuck to my job as a spectator, I couldn't have achieved any of this. It was a result of my ego, a clear consequence of my interference. I changed the story. My words reached no one. However, saying them out loud filled me with a clear, conscious realization of what I'd just done. The realization that I had interfered with the laws of this world, coupled with the guilt of having broken the rules. It was like a shackle weighing me down. Even so, no matter what obstacles I'd have to face, I will save them. I wonder if that'll go so well. Huh. The voice coming from behind me jolted me to alertness. Maybe I should start preparing your friends' funerals for when you fail. It was a voice I could never forget. A voice I'd cursed even in my dreams. There he is. What do you say, Natsumi? Mamiya. How dare you show yourself, you vile being! I'm glad your perchance for drama is alive and well, spectator. How do you know the title? How indeed. Care to wager a guess? The wave of his hand made it obvious that he had no intention of giving me a proper answer. I had a million questions to ask him. Why was he killing them? What was this so-called trichiliocosm that supposedly awaited them beyond death? And most importantly, what even was Mamiya? Swallowing my numerous questions, I simply glared at him. I don't care what goes on in your head, but that changes the moment you start putting their very lives on their scale. I won't allow you to drive these innocent people to their deaths. In response, he grinned, his face full of joy. Drive them to their deaths, you say? A thought born out of a mind controlled by science. What? Let me ask you this then. Why do you people fear death? He merely squinted, but that alone changed the very air in the church. It felt as though he was trying to assert dominance over this entire place, and he wanted me to know too. No one really knows death. Tell me, did any human in this world ever experience true death? Humans don't even understand whether it's good or not. They're simply controlled by this preconception that it's something to be shirked. No. People fear death precisely because they don't understand it. In the world we live in, a single death means the end of it all. Once dead, you can no longer meet any of your friends or family. You can't change that fact. So you're saying it's all good as long as people get to live for a minute or a second longer? That's not what I... No, that's exactly what you meant. Death scares you only because you depend upon your body and honor. What a simple, materialistic line of thinking, devoid of wisdom and reason. I'm only talking about good lives. It wasn't just their deaths I found issue with, but the way of life too. Admit it, it's because of you Mamiya's that they all ended up miserable. Are you really sure about that? From a different angle, you could say Mamiya saved them. Can't you perceive it that way? What? Humans don't know death. It's only their fear of the unknown that drove them to view it as something evil. And so, by granting them an unknown death, Mamiya saved them. Because, you see, salvation at the hands of death was their truest, most eternal desire. How do you feel about their predicaments, anyway? Did you think they would eventually find happiness if they had continued to live? Bound in their personal cages of isolation? Yes. As long as you're alive, you're able to start over. The possibilities are endless. My, what an awfully cruel thing to say. The temperature around us decreased. You witnessed so much pain, yet you would continue to tell them to endure the torture that is their lives. You would continue to tell them to dream of a better future. Am I getting this right? No. Try as you might, your snake tongue will not lead me astray. The greatest error in their good lives they had is the appearance of the illusion calling itself Mamiya. Oh. Everything you've said is subjective. A self-centered evaluation rooted in arrogant sophistry, nothing more. They were similar. Mamiya worming its way into their lives made them lose sight of objectivity. That's why they ended up consumed by subjective illusion. You forget, they are very much at fault too. They sought us out. We merely answered their call. You're wrong. That was because you made sure to close off their means of escape. But this time, I'm putting an end to your schemes. I like this music, by the way. Fetch. It reminds me of, like, the Fate music. Will you now? I'll lead them down the path to salvation, even if Mamiya appears. Natsumi Soichuryo, a stellar body coupled with a wonderful soul. He held out his hand, looked at me like a thing of beauty, then swung it down. Ha! I'm almost jealous. His eyes burned with sarcasm, but when I returned his gaze with a scowl, he quickly changed his expression. But you still don't understand a thing. He implicative words made me scowl even harder. What do you mean? The man simply laughed at me before turning around and walking toward the door. I wonder if Natsumi saw Mamiya before he died and that Mamiya led him to his death. That would be a really crappy twist. Let that question torture you, nameless spectator. Wait, I won't let you do as you... God! I was back. I had just lost a chance to unravel the mystery behind Mamiya. If that alone wasn't enough, I felt something intensely unpleasant as well. Almost like there was something in my mouth. Look. Glancing down, I realized that I had bled so much from my mouth that the blood began to form a puddle on the floor. Ugh! I shoved my hand into my mouth and started frantically moving around what I found inside. I grabbed hold of my tongue and stabilized my breathing. Before I knew it, my tongue had completely healed. The feeling combined with the sight of blood made me remember. Right, I bit into my... Are you all right? Oh, Miss Librarian, this is just... You appear to have returned while in the middle of spectating. It's hardly an uncommon occurrence, so don't let it bother you. Huh? Could I really just ignore all this blood? Wait, what? The fresh blood I had bled onto the floor moments earlier was nowhere to be seen. More importantly, how did your work go? Did you see any major flows in the story? Did you see the stars shift? It's, going well. I averted my gaze and did so almost unconsciously. I went against what she had told me and interfered with their story. How would this smiling, bespectacled woman react when she found out? Just thinking about it, I sent drops of cold sweat down my back. Most excellent. A fatigued worker is a poor worker. I would advise you go rest now. Thank you. I will. I couldn't bring myself to look her directly in the eye. She taught me all the basics when I was lost and confused, yet I repaid her kindness by betrayal. Even so, I want to find the path that leads to their salvation. Alone and surrounded only by books, I joined my hands together and hung my head in silence. Interesting. One thing I'd learned while on the job was that spectators had access to 3 world layers. Ooh. Okay, we're going to keep going. It's going to stop around now, but let's go ahead and look at these layers, because this is going to kind of build up on my idea of like the multi-dimensions. The upper layer was the world I inhabited right now. The place where, book in hand, I flipped through the pages and read the stories set in writing. The lower layer was the world of the living. A place with fresh air, physical bodies, and everything else people needed to lead their lives. The middle layer was where we spectators would observe the living. While here, I could look down on the lower layer like an astral projection. This was also where I watched the tragic fates of my friends unfold before my eyes, and where spectators would usually stay whenever they were in the middle of reading stories. The bird's eye view was offered by this layer would allow spectators to have full grasp of the story's flow. Looking back at it, I was already able to interfere with the story before the start of the funeral. I even recalled briefly addressing my friends. The librarian must have known that too. Apparently, that was only allowed so I could decide which character to focus on. I dreaded to imagine the scolding I would receive should she ever find out about the true extent of my interference. I'm pretty sure she said you would experience, like, true death. It would also be nice if I didn't have to bite into my tongue ever again. Yeah, that didn't sound fun. Anyway, I was now interacting with the story of the 4 people I saw at the cafe. For now, I decided not to interfere and instead focus on merely observing them from the middle layer. I'll remain objective here. Telling that to myself, I straightened my ears to listen to the ongoing story. Alright, I think that's where we're going to end for today. So, it kind of sounds like it kind of is building on the similar idea of the multidimensional, except it just didn't go with numbers per se, just kind of described like layers. But essentially that's what I was saying. It's like, three-dimensional with the fourth dimension of time, lateral time dimension where they kind of float around, where they could observe, almost like watching like the third dimension like a screen, but they can travel laterally through time, so they can kind of observe at their own pace over and over again, like repeating cycles. Like they're not limited to time and observation, but they're limited in scope of like the way the world is. And then this higher dimension allows them to hop between different planes of reality and the different paths it can take in the library. So again, it kind of flows right into that same build. So hopefully you found that interesting, exciting. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to the patrons who help make this channel possible. You guys are awesome, the best ever. I'm really appreciative of your support and continued support, especially as I'm going to school and going through all this craziness, but I think I'm starting to get the hang of things a little bit, so thanks for sticking it out with me. Thank you to Fruitbat Factory. I hope things keep going more smoothly for you guys. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, but I doubt there is, so hopefully you guys just keep strong and carry on and continue to do the great work that you guys are doing, and that not too much was lost ultimately, that you'll be able to recover what was necessary, and that, you know, things will be made right. And then most of all, thank you to anyone who's viewing. Hopefully you found my thoughts interesting and engaging. I'd love to hear what you thought about them and hear some responses. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the time you spend with me. And until next video watching me, I've seen me next. I'll see you there.